PS2 played host to some of the most impressive racing games of that generation, but one game that all but fell through the cracks was Crash and Burn. Quite like the name suggests, destruction plays a huge role in the game, with it drawing many comparisons with the likes of Burnout. Much like in that game, the premise of Crash and Burn is to win races that are run mainly through street circuits. The arcadey controls and easy handling come together to make for an immediate pick-up-and-play experience, but instead of focusing on the sheer thrill of just destroying cars, the approach here focuses more on the consequences of each mashup. Throughout each race, you'll be trading paint with your rivals, who are all intent on beating you to the finish line by any means necessary. Any car that's taken out or explodes is left on the track as either a flaming mass of metal or a simple obstacle to avoid. Your job is not to only win the race, but also keep your car alive in doing so. Each bash, bump and scrape your car suffers, and each fiery stretch of tarmac you speed through deals damage to your car. And by the final lap of a race, you'll be dodging not only the carcasses of abandoned cars that litter the course, but also any surviving members of your opposition as well. With each race you win, you earn cash that can be used to upgrade the cars in your garage. There are 4 car types available: compact, pickup, muscle and sports. Upgrades range from improvements like turbo and performance enhancements to more cosmetic tweaks like new spoilers, wings, hoods or rims to name a few. Overall, Crash and Burn is a fun racing game despite being a combination of a few other well-known titles. The gorgeous visuals and sound, along with the many playable modes and the fact that there is a ton of carnage on the track at once, will no doubt keep players wanting to come back for more. Cygirls made its way west in 2004, born from a popular Japanese franchise that managed to make for a surprisingly original game, at least in concept. The story sees the world suffering from a global power failure, which sends the planet into a new dark age. Several years after this event, a new society emerges from the darkness, a physical world and a cyber world. The adventure sees you taking control of 2 elite super agents, each with their own skills for combat, hacking and other special abilities. They each get their own disc. The gameplay is your traditional run-and-gun third-person action with a sizable chunk of puzzle solving thrown in. These puzzles though, unfortunately, are one of the more negative aspects of the game, especially if you're replaying it and know what to do but are not allowed to do it. It can get quite annoying, but thankfully the fighting not only looks flashy but is also really easy to perform. You'll soon learn to appreciate the simplicity when the enemies respawn infinitely and often. Hacking your way through wave after wave of enemy soon becomes the norm, but with the combat being so enjoyable, it never becomes a chore. Visually, Cygirls is quite impressive on the PS2. Each of the character models possess a loving amount of detail. The levels are rather simplistic in design, often boiling down to mazes dressed with gorgeous textures. The marble floors reflect and metal looks like metal, but oddly enough everything seems to be a bit too colourful at times, giving the game more of an anime movie feel, but perhaps that was the developer's intent. Cygirls is totally original, looks great and features some excellent gameplay, particularly control, movement and the combat. It's just a shame that it was squandered away on something that only the most die-hard gamers will tolerate to completion. When it comes to skateboarding games, the Tony Hawk series is one that will instantly come to mind, and it's no surprise to be honest, as it was one of Activision's biggest series that dominated the genre for years. Skate Attack borrows much from it, but tries to carve its own path by creating some unique gameplay opportunities that help it stand out. From the beginning, you are given the choice of 2 different characters, and depending on which one you select, the other is kidnapped, with the player now having to complete a series of challenges in order to get them back. Like the majority of the Tony Hawk games, you were given the freedom to skate around each of the environments, involving yourself exclusively in the main missions while taking on one of the many side quests at the same time. Most missions will find you fulfilling objectives that you'd be quite familiar with, like grind a certain rail or collect a series of items, but some enter the absolute bizarre and see you flying drones and even hopping on them to fly yourself, or brawling with robotic enemies that block a path forward. The fighting is very similar simplistic and doesn't involve too much depth, as you can take enemies out by simply bouncing on top of them. The laser, meanwhile, is an enjoyable way to journey around the environment, as you can use your laser to jump into any vehicle and take a sneaky ride on top of a car. These few elements do give Skate Attack an identity of its own. Nearly every trick can be linked together through a manual or a grind, which opens up the chance to score big and unlock some of the rewards which drive your progression through the game. Of course, it is by no means the best skateboarding game on the PlayStation 2, but if you never got the chance to play it back in the day and are looking for something easy to pick up and play, Skate Attack is a solid option. Chaos Legion is an action slasher that often gets dismissed as unbalanced and dull. For me, although it's not the best example of what the genre can produce, it's still a solid game that deserves a second look by those who may have skipped it. The narrative follows a young man known as Siege as he tries to track down his former friend and retrieve a book that contains the knowledge to destroy the entirety of existence. Admittedly, the story isn't anything to write home about, but once you get into the gameplay, Chaos Legion comes into its own. As you would expect, you possess a string of basic attacks, techniques, and evasive maneuvers that help lay waste to the onslaught of enemies that come your way. But the main hook of the combat is something known as the Legion system. It sees you commanding creatures known as legions that correspond with a range of emotions. Each of them aid you in battle and bring their own unique traits to the fight. What makes this even better is that by defeating an enemy, you'll receive experience points, which can then be spent on upgrading each of them. This aspect alone lends the game an extra incentive to take on each enemy. Chaos Legion is one of the great unsung slashers of the PS2. The story is cliched beyond belief, the characters are completely forgettable, and maybe its presentation could have been executed a bit better, but the game is overflowing with some of the toughest action you'll ever face. What the game doesn't boast in style, it more than makes up for in content, with obtaining all of the legions, maxing out their abilities, and learning to use them effectively in battle makes for something the game can call its own. Never mind the inevitable comparisons between this and Devil May Cry, Chaos Legion would make a worthy addition to your collection. There were plenty of solid rhythm games that released on the PS2, with the likes of Guitar Man and Amplitude to name a few, but one that never got a fair shake would have to be Mad Maestro. The most striking aspect of this game is that it utilizes classical music and presents a whole selection of well-known composers to play to. You play the role of a character named Tact, and your goal is to save the old concert hall that is being considered to be torn down to make room for improvements to Bravo Town. With the help of Symphony, a fairy who is guarding the concert hall, you have to impress the people of Bravo Town with your musical talent. The highlight is the gameplay itself, which at first may sound quite complicated, but soon becomes one of the most rewarding aspects of the experience. There's 4 circles with colours of either red, green or blue. Blue means you press the buttons softly, red means the hardest, and green is stuck somewhere in the middle. So this game is basically about pressing the button at the right time or you suffer the consequences. Sometimes directions are necessary as well, and depending on where it's pointing, you must push it in that way or make the music even worse. On the left of the screen is a meter that symbolizes angel and devil. The better you play, the more it increases and affects the environment in which you're playing in. Trees will start to grow, crowds will begin to cheer, but if you fall too low, the surroundings take on a much more somber tone. The way the gameplay interacts with the world is an absolute joy to watch, and provides a real kick when things are going well. Overall, while definitely not the flashiest in terms of visuals, the concept of a rhythm game with classical music produces something that is not to be missed. Shooter fans have long kept a special place in their hearts for Taito. From the revered Darius series to the Ray games, Taito has proven themselves competent in the design and execution of both vertical and horizontal shooters. One of their lesser known titles, 12 Stag, never quite reached the same heights of some of their other games, but it still presented a competent shooter that is bound to put a smile on any fan's face. It seems that shooters need to have a gimmick to succeed, whether it be stealing enemies or their weapons, getting point bonuses for proximity to enemy projectiles, or some kind of barrier or protection system. 12 Stag offers up one of the more original ones in recent memory, side and back shots. By attacking enemies with side shots and back shots, you open a window of opportunity in in which the points for any enemies destroyed within it are doubled, quadrupled, and even multiplied by 12, hence the name of the game. The more you combo with the side and back shots, the bigger the bonus gets. If you concentrate on them, you won't have as much fun as you're at greater risk of being shot down, but if you play the game as a traditional shooter and ignore those shots, your score will be pathetic. Trying to balance the two aspects of the gameplay is no easy task, but it soon becomes one of the more rewarding features of 12 Stag, and will no doubt challenge even the most proficient of players out there. Although it's not one of the best shooters on the system by any means, 12 Stag is still worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of the genre. The PS2 was well known for its incredible lineup of racing games. With the likes of Gran Turismo and MotorStorm, there were plenty of options when it came to choosing your next racer, but one that often got overlooked had to be Road Trip Adventure. As part of the legendary Japanese Koraku racing series, which mixes racing and RPG elements together, Road Trip Adventure was perhaps one of the most refreshing titles to come out on the PlayStation 2. It threw out the need to worry about realism and instead focused on a game that was built to be fun, but also offer some serious depth for those willing to dig deeper. The core of the game all revolves around the adventure mode, which is where the racing and RPG genres combine, with the main goal being to become a grade A driver to compete in the World Grand Prix, with the winner becoming the president of the world. Along the way, you'll meet a cast of NPCs which show up as cars scattered throughout the various locations that comprise the world. By interacting with them, you'll be able to take on races as well as a whole assortment of minigames that help ramp up the fun factor. Apart from meeting cars though, one of the biggest aspects, and by far the most impressive, is the customization options you get to delve into. You can change your wheels, the body, engine, and much more, which thankfully all have a noticeable difference on the road, from better speed and handling to individual NPCs complementing your appearance. It's a really nice touch. Overall, Road Trip Adventure is a fantastic racing game. Although not perfect, it still managed to provide something meaningful. The gameplay was innovative, controls were solid, the visuals won't offend anyone, but what matters most is gameplay, and if you're looking for that, Road Trip Adventure has it by the bucket load. Spy Fiction is a game which is best viewed as a sort of tribute to both spy movies and the stealth action video game genre as a whole. Gameplay of Spy Fiction is, for the most part, what you would expect in a stealth action game. You must first infiltrate hostile environments, completing tasks toward an end goal while avoiding detection. What makes this game a bit more interesting than most is the use of a system very similar to Metal Gear Solid 4's Octo Camo suit. By crouching against a wall, you can become invisible. You are also able to use a digital camera to record the appearance of literally any character found in the game, and disguise yourself as them at designated change points found throughout the game. Several missions are in fact designed around locating a key character and posing as them to gain access to restricted zones. This gives you the combination of both total avoidance gameplay as well as being able to freely walk around environments to gather intelligence, with a nice balance between the two different styles. The game is well designed, so the player is offered a choice as to how they want to play. If you want to run and gun all the guards and walk to the exit, you can do exactly that. If you want to go for stealth and avoid conflict, you can do that as well. Almost every situation in the game offers you the choice to play it in a completely non-violent fashion. I love this aspect of the game, as it forces you to fully understand each of the mechanics in play to get the job done right. If you enjoy stealth action games or spy thriller movies, Spy Fiction is an easy recommendation, as it contains most of what people love about both. Eve of Extinction is one of those games you're either going to love or absolutely hate. You take up the fight as a young man known as Josh in the hopes of bringing down a Manacle corporation hell-bent on creating a super weapon known as Legacy. This weapon intertwines with a human soul, and further pushing Josh is that his girlfriend was kidnapped for this purpose. Now the gameplay is where the game truly shines. It's essentially a beat-em-up, and at first the combat system may seem kind of limited, with only 2 attack variations and a maximum of a 2-hit combo, but you're soon able to link more attacks together, not to mention the fact that you can also use weapons. None of these weapons fight alike, so depending on which one you have, your fighting style will vary drastically. A nice touch is that each of them can be upgraded over the course of the game, with any progress you've made being carried over to your next playthrough. Besides fighting, Eve of Extinction also adds a bit of platforming, which is usually incredibly easy or a tad challenging, but the control is fairly simple. I just wish there were a few things which were done differently, namely the camera. The only way to adjust it is to aim it in the direction that you're facing, and that can be rather painful during battles, tricky jumps, or just looking around whilst moving. It's not a complete deal breaker, as it does get easier to handle the more you play, but it would have been far better to just include a free camera. When it comes to replay value, it's a bit limited with it being a beat 'em up, but like I mentioned earlier, it'll take some time to max out each of the weapons, and to top it off, there's several minigames that unlock every time you complete a playthrough. If you're a fan of the genre and have exhausted many of the other beat 'em ups on the PS2, Eve of Extinction is well worth checking out. Dark Watch is a rather unique first-person shooter that brings both elements of steampunk as well as several western influences together to carve out something truly memorable, and a game that is shockingly one of the most underrated on the PlayStation 2. As the player, you assume the role of a man named Jericho, an outlawed gunfighter who works for an organization that's intent on bringing down the various supernatural forces that are hoping to seize power. Now, the main aspect of Jericho that helps him stand out from your various comrades is the fact that he is a vampire. Naturally, this plays a big role when it comes to gameplay. Each ability Jericho possesses comes from this transformation and translates to the player being able to generate force fields, jump incredible distances, and also single out specific enemies in a crowd. Matching this range of skills is the amount of weaponry the player has at their disposal. From pistols and shotguns to crossbows, there's an insane amount of variety to the gunplay, which soon becomes one of the most engaging aspects of the adventure. If you never got round to it when it first released, Dark Watch is a great adventure that well and truly deserves your attention. Well, that does it for today's video. Keep an eye out for part 3, as that will be coming up soon, so don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to get notified about new videos which release every Tuesday and Friday. You can follow me on all of the socials to stay up to date, and also join our growing community on Discord to meet many like-minded gamers to continue the conversation with. I'd like to give a special shout out to our Patreon supporters Rhino, Skilljim, Nano, Steve, Richard, Amy, Daniel, Paul, Quinn, Dio, Alex, Pierre, Carl, Strider, Omar, and Paddy J for their continued support that helps make these videos possible. If you're interested in joining my Discord or supporting the channel through Patreon to gain access to exclusive videos and monthly Q&As for as little as $1 per month, you'll find those links in the description. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found a new game to play. Until the next time, take care.